It's like it's really quick drive.
Just brought around our paper with mostly unprepared.
You want some?
Looking at my tags again.
All right. I think we're ready to rock people.
They start the recording.
Recording in progress.
All right. Welcome to the Williston Review, Development Review Board of November 14th, 2023. My name is Pete Kelly. I'm chair of the DRB. This is a hybrid meeting taking place in the town hall and virtually on Zoom. All members of the board and public can communicate in real time. The planning staff will provide Zoom instructions for public participation before we begin. All votes taken in this meeting will be done by roll call vote according to the law. If Zoom crashes, the meeting will be continued to November 28th, 2023. Let's start by taking attendance of the DRB members. Nate Andrews.
Here.
Paul Christensen.
Present.
Lisa Braden Harder.
Here.
Scott Riley is absent. Dave Turner.
Here.
John Hamilton. Chair is present, so we do have a quorum. Okay, Andrew, I'll turn it over to you for Zoom instructions, please.
All right, thank you, Pete. Welcome to everybody in person and on Zoom. If you're joining on Zoom tonight, please take a moment to name yourself so we know who you are. You can do this by clicking on the participants button on the bottom of the toolbar and then pressing rename next to your name. If you're on Zoom, we have a number of features on the toolbar. You can use the microphone button to mute and unmute yourself, and the video button to stop video and start video. Video is optional. Please just keep yourself on mute if you are not speaking. The chat you can use for technical questions. You can direct questions to me if you have any. And lastly, the raise hand tool can be used if you'd like to speak, and I will call on you. Lastly, we're using side-by-side mode, so everybody can see the same documents tonight. Basically, you can click and drag to enlarge the documents we'll be looking at. If you have any questions while using this, you can let me know, but it will default, so you should be all set.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So first up is the public forum. This is an opportunity for people to weigh in to the DRB on matters not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or participating by Zoom who would like to address the board?
No raise hands on Zoom.
Okay, we'll go into the public hearing section. Tonight we've got 4 items on the agenda. DP 23-11.1 and 11.2 is Jared Enterprises. First is a request for a waiver of the end of trip facility mandate in the previously approved application, and then the second is a master sign plan. Then we go into DP 24-04, which is a boundary line adjustment at 2268 Mountain View Road. And last up is DP 24-06, which is a pre-app for River's Edge building development, and that's the Glazer property on the corner of Old Stage Road and Mountain View Road. So first up is DP 23-11.1, Jared Enterprises. Would you please come forth? If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Bob Lake, 21 Commerce Street in Williston,
Okay, welcome.
and I own the property.
Yep. Okay, staff goes first.
This is a request for a discretionary permit amendment at 21 Commerce Street in the Industrial Zoning District West. The request is to amend DP 2311 to waive the requirement for an end-of-trip facility, given that the estimated project cost to install a compliant shower, an ADA compliant shower, exceeds the project cost set out in the development bylaw. Staff recommends that the DRB take testimony, discuss the end-of-trip requirement, and approve the application. Some project history. In January, the DRB approved the request to create a limited service eating place at 21 Commerce Street. That's DP 2311. In March and into July, administrative permits were approved and issued to build out the limited service eating place. And in the end of July, a temporary CO was issued for operation of the eating place. There were two outstanding things that needed to be completed. One was a compliant bike rack, which has been installed, and the second is the end-of-trip facility. We did not receive comments from any Williston departments or from the public at the time of packet mailout. This is the first amendment to DP 2311. Per WD Chapter 6, the scope of the hearing and DRB action will be limited to determining whether the proposed amendment complies or fails to comply with this bylaw. Getting into the end-of-trip facility. Condition 8A of DP 2311 requires the applicant to provide one long-term bike storage space and one end-of-trip facility. WDB 14.9.2 defines an end-of-trip facility as a shower and changing area. The applicant has installed the long-term bike storage space, but not the end-of-trip facility. WDB 14.9.3 allows the DRB to waive the requirement for an end-of-trip facility when its cost exceeds 5% of the estimated total project cost. The applicant states that the total cost of the project is $175,000, and the applicant has provided estimates to install the end-of-trip facility totaling $26,133. The estimate would amount to approximately 13% of the estimated total project cost. If they install a shower, the applicant would be required to provide one that is ADA accessible to meet Vermont State Plumbing Code. This includes zero curb. The estimates for the renovations are in the application materials. DRB should take testimony and decide if they will waive the requirement for an end-of-trip facility, and they should modify the conclusions of law accordingly. What follows is a recommendation with findings, conclusions, and conditions of approval.
Right. Thanks, Andrew. Okay. So you're looking for a waiver. The cost to comply is in excess of the 5% threshold, and you've provided backup. DRB, you're welcome to weigh in, but I think this is pretty straightforward. DRB members, any questions?
I only have a question. Does your facility next to door have shower facilities in it? Your manufacturing facility, do you have end-of-trip facilities in that building? No showers there? Okay.
Is that a concern, Dave, or?
No, I was just thinking if it was within the limit of a few hundred feet, they could use that as a shared facility.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions from the DRB?
Yes.
Go ahead, John.
So this brings up as much a question for the DRB, I think, as this particular applicant, but
You mean for staff?
for staff, yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That, it's 5% of the project cost, and we have here documentation of kind of what it costs to put the shower in. Is there a definition of where, or is there any detail on where the $175,000 for the project cost came from, and what does that include? I mean, it's the other half of the equation here.
was the overall project cost.
So did that include just the interior renovations, or did it also include the site work that we improved separately?
Just, it would have been I think actually it was the entire project. There was
Okay.
very little.
I mean, that's where it comes up to staff, is if you've got 2 or 3 small applications for the same parcel that come in, but they're within a certain time period, when do you start to conglomerate all of those projects as the overall project cost? Because if, again, I don't think it's going to get there on this one, because I think you'd have to have over $500,000 of cost to have this be within the 5%. But it's not, I don't want to start to incentivize people splitting up their projects into little tiny pieces that would keep them under a threshold.
Yeah, I'd suggest if staff picks up on, the likelihood of something like that happening, might draft a boilerplate condition for the DRB to consider, to the effect of, we're not requiring this now, but we would look at this cost in accumulation with the cost of a future project should one come in when making this determination, and this requirement could be triggered in the future, not just based on the cost of the future project, but additive to the project where we're granting the exemption.
Right.
Something like that.
I mean, again, if there's another application from this applicant next year or the year after to do additional work there, but that also would be, at some point, there's enough of these projects that we're going to say, no, you have to put it in end of trip facility.
Also why we report the approval history as part of the
Yes.
staff
Okay.
report, so that, it reminds everybody of, what all might be in total change.
I mean, we wish them a lot of success in
Yep.
future projects.
Thank you.
That's all.
Anything else?
No,
Pat?
that was the only question I had on this one.
No, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that. Any other questions by the DRB members?
No.
Okay. Does anyone object to just doing this real time, or should we wait after executive session?
We can do it, as far as I'm concerned, we can do real time.
Yep, no,
Okay, do it real time. Okay, who's the volunteer to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay. Please note that we do need to weigh in on the conclusions of law.
Would you like me to go ahead and read it now with those findings? Conclusions?
Why don't we wait though? Why don't we
Okay.
go over this?
There's all the sign one.
Yeah, we'll wait. Okay. I think you see where this is going, but. Okay, anything else? Any members of the audience like to weigh in? Okay, we're going to officially close DP 23-11.1 at 7:12. Okay, next up, same applicant, it's the master sign plan. This is DP 23-11.2. Staff goes first.
All right. This is a request for a master sign plan at a multi-tenant industrial site. It includes 21 Commerce Street and it also to 67 Commerce Street. There's 4 commercial tenancies there, as I understand it. It's also in the Industrial Zoning District West. Staff recommends that the DRB take testimony, discuss the signage proposed, and decide whether 5 freestanding signs are acceptable. Project history we've reviewed. In January, you approved DP 2311. There were no public comments at the time of packet mailout. Applicant is proposing window signs, wall signs larger than 24 square feet, and freestanding signs more numerous than allowable under WDB 25.A. Broken the staff report up into basically into different sections for the type of sign. There's a number of signs proposed. For the wall signs, WDB 25 provides specific requirements for the placement of wall signs. The applicant has not provided pictures or drawings which show the sign bands for the proposed wall signs. Condition 7 is drafted. Staff understands that the proposed wall sign WM-17 is not a wall sign as described by WDB 25.7.5. Staff has recommended that this sign is removed from the master sign plan. For the window signs, the applicant has not provide window measurements to confirm compliance with WDB 25.7.6 and table 25.a. We have drafted a condition. I've spoken to the applicant today, and they have adjusted their window sign sizes to meet the requirements. That can be done at final plans. For freestanding signs, there are 2 existing and 3 proposed freestanding signs in this master sign plan. Table 25A restricts the number of freestanding signs on a parcel to 1 per point of access. WDB 25.6.1.2 states that a point of access includes only widely spaced principal entrances from a road or path to a development, and it does not include emergency or service drives, nor does it include points of access that are less than 330 feet apart. The parcel has 3 curb cuts onto Commerce Street within 330 feet, meaning 1 freestanding sign is allowed. The DRB can allow more than 1 freestanding sign by making specific findings. The DRB should decide whether 5 freestanding signs are acceptable. Staff recommendations for each sign are as follows. For freestanding sign 3 and freestanding sign 6, these are existing freestanding signs. Staff recommends that they are landscaped in accordance with the bylaw. Freestanding sign 7 and freestanding sign 15 are proposed freestanding signs with landscaping. Staff recommends approval with conditions on lighting, which will be discussed in a moment. And then freestanding sign 11 is a proposed freestanding sign with landscaping. Staff has recommended that the applicant replace this sign with a wall sign no larger than 24 square feet. Below is a picture of the location of where freestanding sign 11 is proposed. It's proposed in front of these doors on the plans.
And I'm sorry, where is that on the plan? I have to admit, I'm having a very hard time understanding where these signs are because
Okay.
either I didn't get a plan or there isn't one that shows where these signs are.
I believe
only
you have the
3
plan there.
sheets. I do, but it doesn't say where the signs are as far as I can.
Font's
So let
very
me-
small.
Yeah, let me pull up. I can show you here.
Oh, see?
I felt the same.
Here's
Oh my God.
Oh, I see. They're in orange.
Not only that, they're orange, but one
Yeah.
wasn't the background.
So we'll see if this.
D plus on clarity on the graphics. Oh man. All right,
So here is 21 Commerce Street here, this building. This is Williston Road along the left side of the screen and Commerce Street along the right. The freestanding sign 11 is here circled in yellow. Once again, very hard to see on the screen in here.
I can't.
See if I can zoom in.
Oh, it's in green on here. That's
Okay,
not
so that's 11, yeah.
So 11 is there. See if I can read that. The 2 existing signs, if you guys are looking here, and 1 proposed on the corner of Williston Road and Commerce Street. and one proposed at the furthest entrance on Commerce Street down at the southern side.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Okay, I'm missing one,
There's
because this screen is kind of,
There's one down here, there's an existing one right there,
oh,
and there's an existing one right here.
it's an existing one.
And then, so can you go back in there and tell us the numbers of each of those again? Because I think this one says it's number 6, it's existing, and that one's number 3.
So hard to have both up at once. Freestanding 11 is closest to
Yep,
here.
I think we got 11,
11, all right.
okay?
Is it
That one, I think,
3 and 6? The two existing signs
yeah.
Are
that one,
here.
I think it's 3.
3 and
is
6.
here,
Yep,
and the two proposed are here.
Which numbers are those?
That's 7, where Andrew is now is 7, and then back, that's 15,
The one on the corner?
Those are
Correct.
the two proposed.
and then the other proposed 11 is the one that's very close to the building.
Okay, all right.
Okay. The applicant has several portable signs, they're freestanding lawn signs on the site. Signs are more numerous than allowed by table 25A. It should be removed. We have drafted a condition. For illumination, the applicant has proposed upward-facing illumination for proposed freestanding signs 7, 11, and 15. Upward-facing illumination is not permitted. We have drafted a condition for that. For the frontage calculation, the facades facing Commerce Street were used for the frontage calculation. The applicant is proposing about 282 square feet sign area, right under the maximum allowable, which is 282.5. You can see there's some rounding there. They are below requirement. What follows is a recommendation with findings, conclusions, and conditions.
okay. This is kind of a mess.
Thank you for saying that.
I mean, you've got people up here that are in this business, and we're not following what you're doing here. So it's recovery time for you. Okay?
Fair enough. Let's, Andrew, if we can go to sheet 2. And if you can zoom in on that lower left-hand corner with those two tables, maybe we can do one of the table faces at a time. So here's the inventory of both the proposed and the existing signs. And so all of the breakdown that ends up in the total accounting for the signs is located here on this sheet. And so you can see where there's photos, those are the existing signs. And then where it's text, those are the proposed sign types. And it may be easiest actually to go, once we take a look at this, to go back into the staff notes and kind of work our way back through that text, because I think that will actually clarify much of what we're talking about, and actually remove some of the items that might be points of discussion. So the first thing I think would be helpful to address is the staff recommendation of that freestanding sign 11, which is the one that's closest, who was supposed to be closest to the building. And the staff recommendation to convert that to a building on sign. So we are very happy to make that change. So we're in concurrence with that. And so the total count of freestanding signs then would be 4. And I think that's appropriately reflected in the conditions. And so 2 of those are existing. They represent the signs with varying specialties. And then the other 2 that make up the 4 would be the new. One related to the Island Homemade Ice Cream, and the other related to the driveway that's much farther down Commerce that provides access to the building in the back. So there'd be 2 new freestanding signs. With regard to the lighting, in the updated plans, we'll show that lighting as sign mounted pointing down versus ground mounted pointing up, which is the detail that we had shown. Very compact LEDs on the ground, but we understand that ground mounting is not allowed. So that's will be addressed. One of the questions that we have is in the frontage calculation, only the Commerce Street frontage was included. And with only that, we still meet the standards. And our total actually is 278, call it 279, versus the 281.8. And that's based on a revised table. And actually, if we could put that up, that probably is the better one to look at. That I submitted to you. If you have that.
So, is that, when you're calculating the road frontage, you're not using all of the facades that are shown in here? You're only using the ones of these that are facing Commerce Street, is that right?
Well, when we calculated the total area, we did it based on the building faces that faced Commerce and the building faces that faced Route 2, Williston Road. Staff has only included the area facing Commerce. And we just wanted to why not all the frontage facing streets was utilized for the total value.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The table 25A refers to the frontage calculation and explains that the street-facing frontage is used in the singular, and staff has used a single street-facing frontage for this calculation. Because of that, that is how we've done master sign plans.
So you're saying you choose one
Yes.
side?
Yeah.
The primary one?
Yep.
In this case, you've chosen the one that actually has the curb cuts.
Correct, and also the larger area in this case as well. The Commerce Street facades are larger than.
And again,
industrial.
that was more curiosity. And again, our total numbers meet the requirements. So if we could go to that revised table, or actually in the staff comment sheets that you have before you, under the conditions of approval, all the windows and the wall and freestanding signs are broken down for you. And so you can see the compliance both in size and percentage. And I can point out which of the 2 of the window signs were reduced from 4 to 2.5. So that W9 is 2.5 and W13 is now 2.5. And so the resulting 3 square feet comes off the 281 making that 278.8 now for our total, which again is under our 8%. So if you have any specific questions about the signs, they show up, all of the signs, both existing and proposed, show up in this list. I think the only real discussion was related to the freestanding signs in terms of staff comments. So in order to achieve the 4, the staff recommended that the 2 existing ground-mounted signs be landscape. Applicants willing to do that. And then with regard to the other, the new, with the change in the lighting, the applicant is willing to revise the lighting in the final approved plans.
Okay. I think I get it now. Anything else?
I would defer to your questions. That would
Okay,
probably be
right.
most efficient.
Okay. DRB members, questions?
Sign number 11, which is was freestanding, which you're maybe changing to a wall sign. Is that, it looks like it's on what's being used as like a storage building now, adjacent to the ice cream and cafe, is that right?
There's a small annex adjacent to the existing ice cream sales and warehouse that formerly was an office use. It's currently vacant.
And this sign will go there?
Above the garage. Above the garage. If you look at the second page of staff notes, that image, you see a vestibule entry, and then to the right of it, a garage door. That wall-mounted sign would go above the garage.
So what will that sign be displaying?
So it's a future sign for that future use for when that.
So you're just
space
asking
is-
for approval? Okay, got it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and as my understanding through this process would be, as each of these proposed signs are to be installed, we are back with staff to get permits to do the actual installation.
Got it.
Based on
Yep.
approval that we hopefully gain with the master sign.
Okay, thanks.
And Nate, can I glom onto that? So now that we're asking about that sign, and do I see that sign is going to be 24 square feet? So it's going to be within the requirements of the bylaw.
Well,
So it's
and,
not going to be oversized.
and yeah, all of the signs will be installed, will comport with the master sign plan approval dimensions. And all of those are shown here. The exception would be the freestanding proposed 11, which was proposed as 32 square feet, will now move into the wall-mounted category at 24 square feet.
So that one will be 24, not, it was listed 30
30,
to
yeah.
start with, but that's going to be, I guess that's my question. I just want to make sure we understand that that's actually going to be reduced to 24.
Correct.
Okay. There'll be some math to do, all done. Sorry, Nate.
No, that ain't.
So, Andrew, am I understanding this, that the bylaw would say that for a single property with this much frontage on Commerce Street, which is, I think, less than 330 feet, that would be allowed one freestanding sign?
Yes,
And we're being asked to approve 4,
correct.
2 of which are existing. So I'm trying to put together logic and reasoning of why we should quadruple the number of allowed signs. That's a lot. That's a big over.
So the development bylaw and also the town plan provide ways for the DRB to approve more signs than are traditionally allowed. The comprehensive plan discusses how signs can basically contribute to development of both market appeal and community value. You could make the argument that these signs are adding to the market appeal of these businesses or the community value that these businesses have. Additionally, the bylaw discusses how it can contribute to the economy in Williston. Signs are important for businesses. So that is the language that the findings.
So I understand that. And I'm not, well, Burma shave signs are interesting. I'm not sure they're going to help the industry of Williston. There are 3 separate buildings on this site, correct?
That's correct.
And am I right to understand that these are not all the same business?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is in some ways more like an industrial park than a single business.
And they all have separate driveways and entrances.
So can you go over what each of these signs is going to say? I mean, that's the one thing I would say is kind of missing here, is any kind of discussion about what these signs are doing, what the purpose of them is.
Sure. So the sign, the 2 existing signs relate to Bering Specialties, and the one freestanding sign, if we go back to the site plan, the one freestanding sign is actually behind the building, and really isn't visible from the road at all. So there's the Bering Specialty sign, which relates to the Bering Specialty building, which is that center curb cut. And then the proposed sign that will be on Williston Road, on Route 2, is for the Island Homemade Ice Cream facility. And the proposed sign for the most distal driveway on Commerce, at this point, no sign is proposed to actually be installed there at this point, based on the use that's in the back of that facility, which is a road facility. So right now, that would be a future use, most likely, if that use of that building changed. You're not looking.
Of number 65.
Right, 65.
Yes.
So you're asking for a sign that technically you're not putting up?
Yeah, again, with the master sign permit,
No, I'm just saying, so basically you're saying
sometime.
something in the future,
Correct,
and there's gonna be physically nothing there until there is a change.
correct.
That's all.
And so really, this then turns out to be one freestanding sign for Island Homemade Ice Cream, which is proposed. So at this point, really, within a few months of getting approval and getting things fabricated and getting the permit through the staff, the one freestanding sign would be that Island Homemade Ice Cream.
Is there a significant difference between the text and of sign 3 and sign 6? Since they both apply to Bering Specialties?
So sign 3 is a very simple sign, and it's an example of it, but it just says Bering Specialties, and it's a sign that in the past had been internally lit. It's no longer internally lit. Again, it's just to the left of the building, and it sits back a little ways, and so it's really not very visible from the street.
How would you feel if that was a wall-mounted sign?
I believe in this, there's already a wall-mounted sign there.
So the freestanding sign is redundant.
There's a freestanding sign to the left of the building. There's a freestanding sign to the right of the building, and then there's also a wall-mounted sign
Facing Commerce.
facing Commerce.
Yeah, sign number 5.
And what, I
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
that's is
So-
that 5 or 6?
4, there's a 4 and a 5 pointing to that front of that building.
Yes.
Or either side of it.
Right,
So on the table, sign number 3 is the sign we were talking about, which is kind of behind the building.
Right.
4 is actually a window sign that's in the doorway of the building. 5 is the wall-mounted sign that's mounted on the building face that faces Commerce. And then 6 is the freestanding sign that's closest to Commerce Street.
okay.
Okay, well, like, we can discuss this. I would feel much more comfortable if there was only one sign for each of these one freestanding sign for each of these buildings. If the proposal was, for example, to relocate the freestanding sign for number 47 from next to the building behind it that you can't see from the road to out by the road, that seems like it would make a lot of sense to me. Essentially relocate sign 3, or get rid of it. I mean, you've already got 2 freestanding signs for that one building. And I can see that, you know, you've got 2 for one building and none for the other 2, is how I'm looking at this. In my opinion, it's that 4 is a lot for 3 buildings.
Okay, that's for discussion.
Putting it out there for
Yep.
consumption. Otherwise,
Okay, DRB members, any other questions?
No.
Okay, any recap from the applicant?
Just to confirm that the change from the one, that freestanding sign 11, to convert that to wall-mounted in terms of the conditions is acceptable. Point signs, good with that. And of course, the revision to the lighting of the sign to downward shielded versus ground.
Okay, public comments on this application. Anyone here present like to weigh in on this? Anyone participating by Zoom like to weigh in on it?
No raised hands.
Okay. Okay. Before I close, how your finest work. This was confusing. And a master sign plan shouldn't be this confusing. And so there should have been photos and more legible numbers. And I don't think that that this board should have been forced to ask as many questions and probing as we did. So it's just feedback, and you can disagree with it, that's okay, but that's my perspective. Any comments on that, or?
Thanks for your input.
Okay, okay. So with that, I'm going to close the hearing at 7:41, and thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is DP 24-04, the boundary line adjustment on Mountain View Road. Good evening. You would state your name and address for the record, please.
Tim Brisson, 2368 Mountain View Road.
Good evening, Tim. Staff goes next.
And I think the engineer is online.
Hey, Michael. Okay, is this you, Emily?
Yep, this is me. So this is a request for a boundary line adjustment to transfer 5.27 acres of land and create access for a landlocked parcel. There's 2 lots involved, identified as Lot 2 and Lot 3. Lot 2 will decrease in size from roughly a little over 10 to about 5 acres. Lot 2 has an existing dwelling and a driveway on it. Lot 3 is landlocked and vacant, and it will increase in size from 8.36 acres to about 13.5 acres and create 70 feet of frontage along Mountain View Road. Overall, the property area is 18.73 acres, and it is located in the residential zoning district. Staff is recommending approval of this application with recommendations as shown. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. This property has a unique history. So a subdivision took place in 1973 that created 5 lots, including what's today Adams Market and a couple other homes off of Mountain View Road. In 1985, a subdivision took place to divide Lot 3 and create 2 1-acre lots where Mr. Brisson and his brother have houses. At the time, that subdivision was fine, and we'll go more into the landlocked in a section below, but here's the old site plan photos from the 70s and 80s. Advisory boards did not have to comment on this application. Fire department comments are included. So the discussion about the residential zoning district, access, and nonconformities. These lots, Lot 2 and 3, were originally created in 1973, and they had frontage both on Mountain View Road as well as a 60-foot right-of-way to the south. In 1985, Lot 3 was further subdivided. This boundary line adjustment resolves nonconformity by giving public road frontage to a landlocked parcel. Lot 3 does not meet today's frontage requirements. Frontage on a right-of-way was likely sufficient to meet the access standards in 1973 and 1985, but today our bylaw says that frontage must be along an existing or proposed private or public road. Therefore, because of that nonconformity with our access standards, Lot 3 is considered merged with Lot 2, the house at 2268 Mountain View Road, because the same owner, the Donald and Bernice Brisson Trust, own both of those lots. Chapter 2 of the bylaw says contiguous, non-conforming lots under the same ownership are considered merge. So selling the house at 2268 Mountain View Road without that landlocked parcel would be considered an active subdivision, and without it says a zoning violation. It's very unlikely that that 60-foot right-of-way created in 1973 will ever be used for a road. It fronts along the Heritage Meadows common land with suspected and known wetlands, and wetlands that stream across the other street from the Glazer property into that stream. So it's very unlikely that that 60-foot right-of-way will ever be used. Lastly, because this parcel, Lot 3, was created before 1990, it has an inherent right to one dwelling unit. This application brings access standards into compliance. Our bylaw requires 40 feet of frontage along Mountain View Road. They're proposing 70 feet. Any further access for farming the hayfields or creating a residential driveway would require a separate access permit for Public Works. What follows is standard findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval on this discretionary permit for a boundary line adjustment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Okay, Tim or Michael, what do you have to augment the staff report?
I can have said it more succinctly than Emily herself. It's merely a straightforward proposed boundary line adjustment to grant 70 feet of frontage to a currently landlocked parcel. And at this time, as part of this application, no construction is proposed. So, like I said, pretty straightforward. I don't know if Tim might have anything to add to that.
Not really, no. I mean, you talked about getting a permit from the Public Works down the road, and I might do that so that the Babcocks can come in and still hay all that field, because they've been doing it now for 20 some odd years, so. But that'd be down the road after.
Okay. DRB members, questions?
Only, what I happened to be walking by that the other day, so as an architect, I've always appreciated your house. It's a very interesting. Tim has the Octagon house along the road there. There's a nice bunch of pine trees, it looks like, right along the property line right now.
There.
Right, and those will be, it looks like they're right on the property line.
I'd have to have, when we go out and restake it, we'll know for sure.
Right.
They're on my brother's property, but the the limbs probably.
They do hang
stand
over,
out
which
a
is,
little bit.
so I appreciate you doing 70 feet here. 'cause
Right,
It means that
that's
those
why
trees are likely
yeah,
able to
right,
stay
right.
in the future.
Yeah.
Nicely done, thank you. That was all I had.
Okay.
This is really straightforward and well done.
Any members of the audience like to weigh in? Both here in person or via Zoom? Nope. Okay. We're going to close DP 24-04 at 7:49. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the way we kept farms in Ohio.
All right. Next up is DP 24-06.
Sewer fee.
Brian and Ken, come on up.
So, Pete?
Yes, sir.
So previously, I had indicated my intent to recuse myself on this application. But I have since reviewed the town's conflict of interest ordinance, and I have discussed it with staff. There's really nothing in there that would require me to do that. There is no conflict of interest here. I'm interested in the project. I have been following it closely. I'm very well informed on it.
Great.
So I will be participating.
That's good. Thank you, John. Okay, Brian and Ken, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Ken Bellavo, 683 Maple Street, Waterbury Center, Vermont, 05677.
Brian Courier, Larry Burksville Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex, Vermont.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. So Emily, we had talked about maybe doing a little out of order, and did you have an opportunity to reach out to the applicant?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what we would really like is to kind of start with an overview of the three different options, and what is what's kind of driving that design, and why you're proposing those three different options, and have that be a reference point when staff reads their staff reports. Are you okay with doing that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So first of all, I wanted to mention that Jack Glazer, who's the property owner, unfortunately was not able to attend tonight. And so, Brian and I are going to have to shoulder the burden ourselves. There's been a lot of meetings that have been going on with this, and Jack had some travel plans related to his business, preventing him from being here. So the first time this is in front of this particular board, although, as John mentioned, he's attended some of the meetings that have been going on with the Planning Commission. Lisa and Scott Riley were also on, there was a special committee set up by the Planning Commission to work out the details of the plan. So they're both very, very familiar with the plan. So essentially, the Glazers are pursuing what's called a specific plan. It's enabled under Chapter 9 of the bylaw. It's a process that goes through the Planning Commission, ultimately requires approval by the Select Board, and then if successful there, would come back to the DRB. That's the plan that we want. That's the plan that the applicant is committed to, but it's in front of the Select Board, and there's no guarantee. So in the event that the plan is not approved by the Select Board, the Glazers would pursue an application for development under the more conventional process that all takes place in front of you. So two of the plans are related to sort of the backup plan, if you will, and we'll get into the details of that. Plan 3, which we identified, is the specific plan. That's the plan that was developed in conjunction with the committee that Lisa and Scott were on, with the Planning Commission. As part of that proposal, there was a delineation that was done. There's 2 areas of open space that are being offered to be dedicated to the town, free and clear, no cost to the town. Those are in the lighter green area. The dark green area is a Class 2 wetland and its associated wetland buffer around it. You see there's 2 development areas. The build out there is 109 dwelling units. After doing the wetland delineation, you've got about 43.5 acres of upland. That would give us a maximum build out of 130 dwelling units. That plan calls for 109. That's what we're committed to. That's what we really hope is approved, and that's what we really hope goes forward. So that's the big thing right there. There's been a lot of work that's been done on it. Been much more examination of this plan than you would typically see it with a pre-app. So there's a lot that's known about the property. There's a lot of things that have already been worked out. So we go to the Plan B, which is plans 1 and 2. So Plan 1 is 130 dwelling units per acre. As I just said a minute ago, when you do the math, 3 per acre times the upland areas, you get 130 dwelling units. That's a proposal for 130 dwelling units. There's no offer of dedication of land to the town. It would be an open space subdivision. The wetland areas would be preserved as open space as required under the basic provisions of the bylaw. Plan 2 is predicated on a build out of 5 dwelling units per acre. So why do we go to 5 instead of 3? Well, as you no doubt you've seen in the staff report, the discussion about Act 47, recently enacted by the Vermont State Legislature, which says that in areas that are going to be served by municipal water and sewer, you have to allow at least 5 dwelling units per acre. Now, staff has put forth an interpretation of your regulations as they exist today that would argue that they meet that requirement. You have very well educated and bright staff, but that interpretation may not be correct. We have recommended that the board get a legal opinion from the town's land use attorney to make sure that everybody's on firm ground in terms of how all those provisions get interpreted. So that 180 dwelling units in Plan 2, that's predicated on a potential build out of 5 dwelling units per acre. So that's probably pretty good overview for how we got here and where we are and what we would like.
That was great. That was very helpful. Thank you. And although it'd be pretty much impossible not to have some level of awareness as a community member, it hasn't come in front of the DRB, and so that was very helpful. So with that, Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Pete. And thanks, Ken, for mentioning the specific plan advisory committee. I want to note that Scott's role on that committee was as the representative of the Development Review Board. And so he was wearing the hat of looking at the proposed town plan bylaw amendments and helping make sure that whatever language is proposed is clear, so that if the DRB ever gets to be reviewing it and enforcing it, it's understandable, more so than maybe our sign chapter, where we're always making sure our bylaw language is as clear as it can be when we amend it. Lisa's role was as the representative of the community at large, and she was appointed to that advisory committee a couple weeks before applying and being appointed to the DRB. So I wanted to clarify their roles in that process. So to the pre-application staff report. There are 3 concept plans with various units types, various layouts, and unit count. And pre-app is the time to present multiple concepts in an informal way to invite comment and discussion of alternatives. Concepts 1 and 2 propose the same road layout with different unit types. And concept 3, the specific plan, has fewer roads and units and is what's under review by the select board. This property is 97 acres. It's currently vacant, not developed with any structures. The proposed use is residential and has access on town roads. It was not subject to design review. It's not in a design review district. It was subject to Conservation Commission review. Staff recommends approval. There's a few items bolded in the staff report for your discussion, where the DRB might need to edit some recommendations. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. In 2003, there was a concept approval, but not a final approval for a 2-lot subdivision. That never moved forward. And previous to that, in 1983, there was a conceptual plan proposed that subsequently developed into lots that are also known as neighboring properties like Northridge, Turtle Pond, the town disc golf course behind Central School. So a concept plan for a much larger parcel was presented back in the 80s. Conservation comments are included, as well as the fire department. Police did not comment. Public Works also did not comment. And we encourage the applicant to reach out to them when they've picked out their layout, talk to Public Works about looping water lines, where road and sewer and water connections are going to go. It's very hard for Public Works to review all of those elements for differing proposals. One comment letter was received at the time of mail out, and no further letters received up to tonight. That comment letter is included, and we did provide a couple notes about the bylaws applicability for schools, traffic, and utilities. So that specific plan has an informational session, one last week with the select board, one on the 21st, and the select board would decide to warn town plan and bylaw amendments. I'll go into the important ones for you later on in the staff report. The earliest a hearing could be held is winter 2024, so maybe January. And then the DRB would have new bylaw amendments that could be reviewed in early 2024. A project only becomes vested when a discretionary permit application is submitted. There were another slate of bylaw amendments that went through on October 17th with significant changes to Chapter 11 to adopt inclusionary zoning and adjust growth management applicability and scoring. And I'm going to pause there for a moment and just back out to let the DRB know that on your meeting on the 28th, we're going to talk about all those bylaw amendments and the S100 state law preemptions as their own work session. I know we're throwing a lot out here with new bylaw amendments, state law, and we can go deeper into detail outside of looking at a specific application next week or next meeting. In the residential zoning district, compliance is anticipated with one recommendation to discuss about focal points. So this is an open space subdivision, and pedestrian-friendly design is encouraged. Ideally, every dwelling must be within about 1,300 feet of a focal point, and the DRB may permit minor exceptions to the standard. This is an expansive development over almost 97 acres, and it's bisected by a wetland. So the discretionary permit must state the farthest distance between the community building and a unit. Connectivity compliance is also anticipated. And housing choice. Each concept proposes multiple homes, which are not required but strongly encouraged in growth management. Now to the discussion of growth management. So that bylaw amendment created a new option, inclusionary zoning. If a project achieves a certain number of units as perpetually affordable, they can go from pre-application straight to discretionary permit. I've provided a table that shows how many units would need to be affordable at 80% area median income or 100% area median income. Not shown on the table, but also in the bylaw is a mix and match. So if the applicant wanted to propose some 80 and some 100, they could do that. Option 2 is growth management with pay in lieu. So this is the same process as we've known it before, where you pre-app to go to growth management. Now, in addition to that allocation phasing cycle, a project would have a payment in lieu fee. Based on the number of projects, it's a graduated fee based on how many units are in the project. This fee would range from just under $800,000 to about $1.38 million, depending on how many units are in the project. I do note that as part of that growth management amendment to include payment in lieu, the scoring criteria also changed. So way more options, more practical options to get energy efficiency points. That affordability score goes away because you either are inclusionary or your market rate under growth management. Lastly, option 3 is the Glazer specific plan phasing schedule. So what I've included is the proposed language that the select board is considering. If that amendment is adopted, then the DRB would have directions on how to score and assign allocation that's separate from the other 2 options that would apply to conventional subdivisions. Access.
So if I could weigh in.
Yep.
Because this is new territory for us. So if the specific, if the select board approves the specific plan and the applicant goes in that direction, then it bypasses growth management, but there's a requirement that the proposed plan meets a point threshold. And those point thresholds are outlined on the bottom of page 5 of the staff report. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is they've proposed this as if it were growth management, and that's part of the specific plan that would be approved.
Yes, and part of that advisory committee's work with the applicant, we did a mock growth management scenario where they filled out a questionnaire, we blind scored it, and then the advisory committee talked over that score. So what would happen at discretionary permit, they would provide that questionnaire to you guys. Our staff report at discretionary permit would go through all those scoring criteria, and your findings for discretionary permit approval would list out what that score is. So we basically take what you do in a growth management hearing and just stick it into part of the discretionary permit staff report hearing process.
So what safeguard is there for the applicant who has gone through all this process and gets to a discretionary permit, gets the specific plan approved, submits for a discretionary permit, comes in front of the DRB and doesn't meet the threshold?
Then we'd be having a discussion. I see that being very unlikely because there's been a lot of deliberations with the applicant and the advisory committee, and that concept plan that you see has evolved several times. So I don't see anything major changing between that concept you see today and discretionary permit. Some points might be fewer in one category and more in another, but I see it very unlikely for them to fall below that 50 points. And if they do, then the DRB would be having that discussion with the applicant. What elements can you tweak in your design to achieve that 50-point minimum score?
Okay.
Could I add something?
Yes,
Just that
absolutely.
Emily mentioned the 50 points. And so when we were working with the committee, it went from the plan went from the planning commission, and they set up there was a charge, and there was a whole list of things that we were supposed to address. And one was they wanted the project to show that it could achieve a growth management score of at least 50 points. The idea is you need at least 30 points to get anything, but they didn't want something that was minimal. So 50 points was the target. And so we went through the growth management criteria at the time, and I think it was 52 points is my recollection.
52.
And so that's always been our understanding. That's our understanding today. That was our understanding going through the process with the planning commission and the committee. So we're committed to that. As I said in my opening comment, we're really, the applicant's committed to the specific plan. And the other thing, as I recall, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but what the planning commission said in terms of growth management was that the applicant would have some flexibility to utilize some of the new criteria under the new bylaw. Specifically, the thinking was especially around the energy efficiency stuff, which is kind of like an all or nothing, what it used to be, whereas now apparently there's more flexibility. So that was our understanding. So
Traffic too, they looped in there too, the traffic section, or not traffic,
Sustainable transportation.
Yep.
Yep. That
sustainable
one.
transportation.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the same criteria that we judge projects in March in growth management. Exact same criteria, because 50 points is a lofty score.
It's the way
Yes.
you've been doing it all along.
Okay.
What you'll do in this coming March with new projects will actually look different than the criteria that are listed here. So, you know, when the planning commission established this charge, they looked at the criteria that were in existence at that time and until very, you know, late last month.
Yeah.
So this project, if the bylaw amendments under specific plan go through, those amendments identify this very specific pathway and says, you know, the DRB needs to look at the score based on the following criteria with the following flexibility around those energy and sustainable transportation categories, and make a finding that it's still honoring that minimum 50-point score the planning commission wanted to see.
Okay, we're gonna take pause here. DRB members, this is an important topic. So are there any questions for staff?
I got where we are, man.
No, I'm good.
Well done. Any questions? Everybody got it?
I mean, I think since this is, it's a different process, obviously, than the typical growth management, why do we not have in the packet how, through that mock session, you got to the 52 points?
Simplicity. And that's part of the Planning Commission Select Board's legislative process. So if that bylaw amendment package goes through, there'll be Appendix K, a new appendix to the bylaw. That's everything the advisory committee worked on, that whole process, that questionnaire, minutes, staff memos. So if these questions come up in your DRB process, we'll have all those accompanying materials to go back and ask questions. And look at what was proposed then versus what comes forward at discretionary permit.
So that, you're saying that would be in the packet at DP?
Yep.
Whereas normally, for a pre-app on any project, we really don't, that's when we always have the little phrase in there that says, don't forget to think about growth management points, and here are the criteria.
Right.
Right, yeah.
These guys clearly are familiar with that. Okay.
Okay, anything else before we continue? Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
All right, access, connectivity, traffic standards, studies. In general, compliance is anticipated here. They're proposing some new street and, in one scenario, a new driveway curb cut. Bicycle and pedestrian access compliance is anticipated, but we're going to discuss units 1 through 5 that are shown on concepts 1 and 2 in a moment. Multiple points of access compliance is also anticipated, so they're not proposing more than 40 units on a single point of access. I do note that a comment came up in the fire department memo where they would prefer a loop road. However, our bylaw cannot require a loop road. It says no more than 40 units on a single point, and in this scenario, they've proposed a cul-de-sac. Connectivity compliance is also anticipated. They're proposing a future road right-of-way that would extend towards the Batdorf parcel. If that parcel or Martell to the west were ever to develop, the intent is to be able to create connectivity with future neighborhoods. Unfortunately, due to known and very likely presumed wetlands, it's infeasible to create road connectivity towards Coyote Run or Northridge. Lastly, traffic study. We do recommend one be submitted at discretionary permit. Parking and loading compliance is anticipated here. We're proposing single and multifamily units where vehicular parking and bicycle parking can be accommodated for each home, and end-of-trip facilities are not required because no commercial use is proposed. On-site infrastructure, so circulation. The DRB and applicant should discuss units 1 through 5 and concepts 1 and 2. So these are 5 homes proposed on a residential driveway with access onto Turtle Pond Road, which is a town road. And currently, the plan doesn't show any pedestrian connection for someone to be able to walk across the street. That would be the means for them to access the community amenities as well as go out Turtle Pond, cross Old Stage. Due to property ownership and wetland constraint, it's not feasible to provide a sidewalk along that side of the road. So some pedestrian connectivity needs to happen here to loop those homes into the rest of the neighborhood. But compliance is anticipated with all other standards of Chapter 15, where they're proposing sidewalks and in some cases multi-use path on both sides of the road, including a multi-use path along the Mountain View Road frontage. Neighborhood parks, compliance is anticipated. They're proposing a 1,200 square foot community building, 2 neighborhood gardens, and that connecting multi-use path between the 2 main neighborhoods. Discretionary permit must also demonstrate compliance with utilities underground and municipal water and sewer service. Maintenance, snow storage and removal. The discretionary permit must include a snow management plan, including association covenants and bylaws to that manner, particularly that snow removal is required from fire lanes, sidewalks, trails, and other required improvements. I bring that up for that connecting multi-use path. If Public Works does not desire that to be a public amenity and it's to remain private, then it should still be maintained and plowed through the winter time. Accessory uses and temporary structures, etc. So the discretionary permit must include a construction management plan in compliance with 1714. This must describe the various phases of construction and include locations for materials and equipment storage. This plan must explain how access and parking will be managed after the streets are built, but homes are still under construction, especially the management of contractor and subcontractor vehicles. The DRB may require security fencing or other measures to prevent entry onto construction sites or access to stored equipment and materials. Planning staff also recommends that this plan be posted on a temporary construction sign so it is accessible to subcontractors new to the site. The reason we're including this and putting a closer eye on Chapter 17 is in some recent subdivisions and developments in town. We're having compliance issues with roads are built, people are parking all over. It makes it very difficult for the fire department to access these areas, and it also creates erosion and maintenance issues. So that this is pre-planned before work takes place, so everybody working on the site is operating safely and not creating constructive nuisances. Chapter 19, density. So this was where Ken was mentioning the S100, aka Act 47 preemptions. Williston has a definition of a dwelling as a building, typically a single-family home or separate space in a larger building, like an apartment, that contains complete housekeeping facilities for one household. Note that definition doesn't talk about number of bedrooms. Williston measures what residential density using the dwelling unit equivalent, DUE, where 1 DUE is a unit that has 2 or more bedrooms and half is a studio or 1 bedroom. And Williston determines maximum residential density by calculating out constraints, wetland, steep slopes, whereby there's several different unit configurations at that base density of 3 DUE per acre. And our bylaw also allows a bonus density to 5 DUE an acre, where 30% of the homes are affordable at 100% the area median income. In the application, the applicant has not represented what proportions of the homes will have 2 or more bedrooms. I believe the plan is for them to all have 2 or more bedrooms.
That's correct.
So because of state law, there's a change to Chapter 24 VSA 4412 that states, in any area served by municipal water and sewer infrastructure that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwellings per acre for each allowed residential use. This became effective in July and preempts our bylaws. However, Title 24 does not contain a definition of dwelling, and Williston defines dwelling as above without regard for number of bedrooms. Title 24 and the various subsections do not contain a definition of acre, nor do they contain a definition of density or residential density. Those statutes are also silent on calculation methods for density that remove constrained lands prior to determining allowed build-out. Therefore, if the DRB would like an opinion from town council, staff supports that, and a recommendation is included. We would seek this legal opinion prior to growth management or discretionary permit, whichever comes first. However, we do not recommend continuing this pre-app hearing. What follows is a list of questions that planning staff have drafted for consideration for the legal opinion. Some of these questions are more broad-based. These preemptions don't apply just to this project, they apply town-wide. So the DRB and staff would be seeking this legal opinion, not just for this one project, but for the entire bylaws. I'll pause there if we have any questions.
We need a legal opinion.
We do. And I agree, I concur. I think this is a great opportunity to get the legal opinion right away after this law has been put into place so that we have that legal opinion going forward.
And I'll just note, and we'll talk about this in our work session, you know, at the time that this law was enacted, very shortly before it was enacted, the bill draft was changed to make all of these changes effective July 1, not giving any Vermont community enough time to actually amend its bylaws. So all are preempted until they can adopt bylaws that comply with this new legislation. We're going to enter into that process. At the time that this bill became law and this July 1 deadline was imposed on the municipalities, Williston had no fewer than 4 potential bylaw amendments in process already. We're essentially going to be joining up this S100 Act 47 response with the 4th of our 4, the village bylaw, bringing that through the Planning Commission review and hopefully select board adoption process this winter and spring. So we would value at the staff level this legal opinion for anything residential that comes before the board. Prior to that, the legislature, as people are fond of saying, in its infinite wisdom, used some terms that don't have exact parallel to the terms used by the town of Williston or many other towns. They were silent on how towns are or are not allowed to calculate base lot area for determining density, but very vocal on the idea of that density being preempted, presenting a challenge. So we'll help the Planning Commission write something that is way more clear than what we're showing you right now, but we would value that opinion from the town's attorney, just for this project, for other residential projects that may take advantage of these changes in law. I'll just note on the aside, there's another provision of this law that gives definitional affordable housing developments an extra floor in height. And we have an application before us that's asking to do that, and had to talk with our attorney about what extra floor meant in the context of a whole bunch of design standards. So this is very much a moving target. Nobody's got it right. There's nothing wrong with an applicant wanting to look at this. There's nothing wrong with the DRB seeking clarity, and we'd be happy to do that. I would ask if members look at those questions, A, B, C, D, E, that's our best shot at asking clear questions, but if you have any feedback or if those raise other questions for you that we can put into that request, we'd love to hear it, so we can ask.
Do you want those tonight, or is that something we can look at and think about? So
Next couple of days?
next couple of days.
I mean, I'd like to get
Until
something
tomorrow
going.
morning.
I see, gotcha.
I'd like to get something going with council soon, but I'm happy to add on to it, and, you know, the legal bill comes out of the manager's budget anyway, so.
Oh, yeah, Eric's got that.
What do I get?
If I'm understanding this right, if this option 3, if the specific plan is approved, this is kind of moot.
We don't have to worry about any of
So
this.
can you give us in 4 sentences or less kind of why it makes a difference on this?
So it makes a difference if the project is not seeking the density bonus that is identified in the bylaw as the pathway to 5 dwellings per acre, dwelling unit equivalents, meaning everything is more than 2 bedrooms and it's 5 of them per acre. So in those larger build-out projects, if that's the case, and if they're not identifying a minimum of 30% of the dwellings as affordable, which they're probably not, they would need to be taking advantage of these state law preemptions to gain that density.
Okay. Got it. In concept. I'm not even going to pretend
All
to
in
understand the
con-
math and exactly which option means what there, but. Got it.
So, taken at its plain, as state law says, if you've got an area served by water and sewer that allows residential uses, you need to allow 5 units per acre density there. And that's what it says, and that's all it says. And within that, there are the clarifying questions that we'd like to seek answers to.
Yep, got it.
Okay. Question? So in other words, no matter what the legal people say, if they suddenly go rogue and say, no, we don't want to do this, these gentlemen could go to court, and it's sort of like, this is in handwriting, this is going to be approved, so it's kind of a moot point, isn't it, sort of?
Well, part of the purpose of seeking legal opinions for the DRB is to keep us out of trouble and me out of the box at the environmental court. So,
Well, that's not fun.
no, not when Chris Roy makes you look stupid, which was my experience. So the reason we would ask for some guidance on this is to try to get it right, avoid a costly and time-consuming appeal. In the way this works in Vermont, you don't just get to be right. If we say it one way and the applicant sees it another way, potentially we go to court, we spend a lot of money.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that the state has already made a ruling.
Well, they have, but they haven't told us what density really means. They haven't told us what dwelling really means.
Okay.
And none of this, unfortunately, or fortunately for those other communities, has been litigated anywhere else yet. So there's no case law.
So if they haven't told us, how is the legal, can't squeeze blood out of a rock, what's the legal opinion going to tell us?
Well, what it's going to tell us is,
We approved this.
in council's experience, what is the standard for interpreting stuff that's ambiguous in local zoning and in state law? Generally, that falls to the applicant. And ambiguity falls to the favor of the applicant as opposed to the municipality, because zoning is a limitation on constitutionally protected property rights. The attorneys have this in a copy-paste format. They still charge the same hourly rate to put it in the memo.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So that's the deal, really, is just, or is there a definition of dwelling or density that I couldn't find in statute that our attorney, that they would then draw from, or Black's Law Dictionary, et cetera. So generally, I'll also say, Nate, when we go to the State Agency of Commerce and Community Development and Department of Housing and Community Development, who are tasked with advising communities about this stuff, most of what they have said is you should adjust your bylaws in the most generous interpretation of this.
That's what I thought.
And that's great when we're adopting bylaws, because bylaws either get adopted or they don't. And there they are. But when you're fighting over the interpretation in terms of pending application, it would be better, we could be really generous and we could end up on appeal with someone who doesn't like the approval. Or we could be really stingy and end up on an appeal that the applicant doesn't like. So again, hence the reason to go to a legal opinion.
It identifies the firmest ground for us to stand.
The least shaky anyhow.
Okay, Emily, continue.
It's downhill from here. So landscaping,
In a good way.
provide a good landscaping plan at discretionary permit. There's several properties in play here. There's one unique recommendation that the buffer be provided adjacent to the proposed homes rather than directly along the property line, particularly near the Moss Windswept Farm property. Street trees demonstrate compliance at discretionary permit. Street trees along the proposed new roads. The DRB may waive the requirement for street trees where a road passes through scenic existing woods or to preserve a scenic vista. Recommendation 2G is included. I do note that if the specific plan goes forward, it'll be written into the bylaw that they don't need to do street trees on Old Stage or Mountain View to protect those views. Conservation Commission reviewed this application on November 1st. Their recommendations are included. This area is identified to have significant wildlife habitat. A habitat disturbance assessment shall be prepared. I do note that as part of that recent bylaw amendment package, the contract is funded by the applicant but taken on by the town. So that HDA is done by a wetlands consultant on the town's behalf. Farmlands of local importance are mapped on this property. However, Chapter 39 states that protecting farmland is not a primary goal in this district. Scenic view shed. The DRB and applicant should discuss concepts 1 and 2 and their impact on the view shed. These homes would be visible in the foreground and middle ground, looking towards the views of Camel's Hump and Yance Hill. Chapter 39 does state that partial protection of a view may be combined with good site planning. And there's a couple of those view shed and habitat maps. Watershed health, provide an erosion and runoff control plan, protect class 2 wetlands. A delineation has already been done for that dark green wetland in the middle. More wetlands are suspected but not planned to be impacted by development. Official map compliance is anticipated. So they're proposing to construct a segment of multi-use path along Mountain View Road. And they're accommodating other facilities by not putting any development in the way that would prevent an easement or a trail towards Martell Park or the North Ridge open space. Though official map does show a desire for grid streets through this property, the wetlands propose a physical barrier, and they are maintaining connectivity to the Batdorf parcel. Outdoor lighting, there are standards for lighting on 1 and 2 household dwellings versus dwellings that have, or buildings that have 3 or more units. And then what follows is standards about temporary construction signs, and impact fees will be assessed at the time of administrative permit. What follows is a list of recommendations. Number 2G, the DRB would want to make a change about street trees, and then provide any additional recommendations they see fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, Ken and Brian.
I don't have anything for the body of. I have a couple of conditions.
Go ahead.
Okay. B basically deals with a construction management plan in compliance with 17.14, including a plan for fencing materials and/or gated access for security during construction. So, though we are submitting 3 plans tonight, if we are allowed to move forward and specific plan does get approved, we move right to discretionary. So that's how I'm looking at these approved conditions here. This isn't a hotel downtown, not a commercial project. It's expansive, the expansion of the residential use of this property, though split by the wetland, is 40 acres. The road gets built first, and the sequence of the houses when they get built, is determined by the market at the time and what sales can happen. So coordinating a detailed construction plan that, is detailed enough to show where fencing limits may be at. I just wanted to put it out there that, my interpretation of this section is that it mostly be speaking in generalities, and that my experience with this section is that most of the time this comes from zoning administrative enforcement. And if that wasn't acted and we didn't agree with the solution, we do have the right to appeal to you folks. So I just wanted to, that's the first time I'd seen that make it into approval condition. So I don't have experience with producing that plan, but just given the type of project, size of project, and really unexpected build out come from residential, I just wanted to state that and see if the DRB had any feedback. So.
So I recommend that you go back to, if you haven't, go back to meeting minutes and staff report of a month or two ago, where this topic was raised on a ongoing project here, here in Williston. And it's really about the developer paying attention to occupied homes and the impact that construction has on occupied homes and reasonableness. This is not intended to be naive to the construction process and the natural sequencing that's associated with construction projects. It's in the case that was brought forth to the DRB recently, that the standard of reasonableness was violated, and so this is just to bring it out there and put it in the forefront and have people thinking about it ahead of time.
Okay.
I know that's vague, but my message is that if you're acting in good faith and paying attention, the probability of having a problem is low.
Couple things not related to the project you're referencing, Pete, but that we've encountered, and as a zoning administrator, I've also encountered the incredible limits of my ability of enforcement. In a residential subdivision, things like storage of construction materials in a way where there's no access control on that storage yard, including in partially built developments where there's kids living and it's basically creating an attractive nuisance. Partially built swimming pool full of water with no fence around it was one I encountered. Failure to control access to the construction site such that the excavator was arriving on site at 5 or 6 in the morning and going to work with the contractor saying, "What am I supposed to do?" He shows up and it's like, well, if you have to, you put a chain across that road to tamp down that noise nuisance that otherwise is very difficult to enforce. Any utility vaults with uncontrolled access or a person-sized hole in the top of them needing to be covered and secured with something of sufficient weight that a kid can't move it. A lot of this could probably be addressed in plan notes and general operations standards as opposed to necessarily a drawn plan saying, this is exactly where my fence and my gate and those sorts of things are going to go. Certainly plan notes about vehicle parking or a plan for temporary construction vehicle parking. Again, zoning enforcement is a terrible tool when someone from the fire department calls me and says, there's contractor cars parked on both sides of this new street, and if that house under construction caught on fire at the end of the street, I can't get to it. So when all of those things are talked about and anticipated on a plan as the administrator, it gives me something that I can walk out on site with and say, it says here on your plan that everybody's going to park on one side of the street. You need to follow that. And, it also really protects the town in that we tend to get a class of complaints about sites where construction's underway from citizens that are kind of legitimate, but not really. And then the zoning administrator is left to say, well, this complaint, I can tie it to something in the bylaw. This one I can't. You have to make those judgment calls. Makes you very unpopular with the neighbors. It's much, much easier if we have a plan that's part of the final set that addresses as much of that as we can get ahead of, so everybody knows how it's going to go on site.
So the intent's not to have this plan that every time there's a house that goes under contract, you go back and draft up a new plan to reflect.
No, I just wanted to make sure the generality.
It's about notes, it's about contractors parking on one side of the road, it's about all those different things that Matt was talking about, and it's really, if a site supervisor is just looking through a common sense lens this is unlikely to be an issue.
And I would add on this specific project, that green area that you see that's kind of back right up to where there's a bunch of houses are going to be horses. And horses react to loud noises. Some of them react one way, some of them another way, but they're going to have to be there while you're building this. So some addressing of or knowledge of that might be useful. There's nobody in the audience tonight, but as you know, they're not always empty seats here for this project.
Sounds like we're on the same page. And then moving to 2G, just talks about street trees. I'd just like to note that the specific plan, specifically, one of the bylaw amendments was to take the street trees off of Mountain View and Old State Road. We hope the DRB would see that consistency maybe with the other two plans as well. And then the fire department memo dated October 20th, 2023. Is that the one we received from a specific plan? I don't believe so. Not if it was October. Just if we could get a copy of that, that would be great. 4A, talking about the HDA, the applicant should contact staff following DRB review of the pre-application to discuss the procurement of an HDA. So my understanding is that the Conservation Commission made a recommendation that the town should select the biologist for the habitat disturbance assessment.
Yes, and it's a bylaw standard.
So this was changed.
That's one of the amendments.
We found that the public that was critical of our development review process had a lot of angst over the idea that the applicant was paying someone to do the disturbance assessment. So that the town has taken on that responsibility at the applicant's expense. You pay for it, we hire a consultant, they write their report, and that's considered by those who supported that amendment to be a more impartial review than having the applicant do it themselves.
So the town gets yelled at instead of you.
Yeah, I was going to propose a third party. We don't do those studies in-house. I can see if they were in-house, them being less impartial, but I didn't realize that was part of the very recent bylaw. So.
Yep.
And then 4B, at the end of it, it talks about the wetlands delineated. It says a functional assessment of class 3 wetlands must be included. I believe in the body of the staff report, it says the DRB can request that. There are a few class 3 wetlands within the uplands on the northern side of the site. That's a new condition that I haven't seen before. Essentially, a class 3 wetland, as part of the definition, is function values don't warrant protection on its own. Usually that's hydraulic connectivity, size, those are two big indicators. But not a huge deal, just something I haven't seen, seems redundant to the state wetlands program's guidance.
What would be your suggestion?
I would say if they were delineated class 3 and conformed by the state wetlands program, that the designation supports that the functions and values should warrant protection. I don't think aside in a separate analysis of each pocket of class 3 wetlands, I don't think that's a valuable exercise.
Right, so what chapter 29 says is the DRB may require a functional assessment of class 3. It may require class 3 with significant functional values remain in their natural vegetation. So in this instance, there's 3 very small pockets of class 3 wetland. One is hidden by this text box. I think it's fair for the DRB to strike that recommendation if they see fit. There's not many, and they're very small class 3, and this area has all been done by the state. It just was one section of chapter 29 to bring to your attention.
Okay. Thank you.
Does it make a difference whether this is option 1, 2, or 3? I mean, option 3, which is the specific plan, it doesn't get anywhere close to those.
Right,
The other
making
is
that
class, right,
recommendation
cool.
would be a moot point in that instance. It would be 2 and 3 where some houses and streets would.
There is a class 3 that's impacted in all 3 plans. There's one up by the intersection on the northern cluster.
Oh, okay.
So it is applicable to all 3.
Okay.
Thank you. And then 4C, it just says proposed development must not encroach in watershed buffers. If you would just consider changing the not to minimize, we may need force main water crossings within that wetland area. So I would just ask that you consider minimize,
Okay,
which we need a state permit to do, but.
okay, is that it? Okay.
I
great.
have one,
Yep, go ahead, Ken.
the wildlife habitat assessment.
Yep,
If you look at the map for this area where it's a question as to whether or not it's a wildlife habitat area, it's not exactly, but it pretty much approximates the open space area that's been promised under Plan 3, which is the specific plan. So what's been proposed by the applicant is that the permanently protected open space that would go into town ownership. And what I would say is it sort of begs the question as to why we would need a wildlife habitat assessment of an area that's proposed to be permanently protected open space. You know, what would the assessment say? It would say wildlife cross through here, and we should make sure we leave an area for the wildlife to cross. Okay,
That's already been resolved.
well, that would be my point. So in the event, I could see where the board might require that for Plan 1 or Plan 2, which is our backup plan, if you will. But if the specific plan gets approved, to me, it sort of begs the question, what would we be accomplishing? And, you know, it's interesting to note that despite all the review and analysis of this proposal, this has not come up until now. And the plan was in front of the Conservation Commission several times. So I get that it's there, but I would question its applicability if we do pursue the specific plan.
Andrew, can you put the map that's in here up on the? Because I'm having a hard time imagining, I'm not sure what the different colors on this map mean. It's where it says wildlife habitat map. That's the only one we have to go on tonight. So which striping or which colors are the ones of the areas that are wildlife habitat? The green?
Yeah, so the green is habitat, brown dashed is corridor. And it's funny that it's all the meadowland and the forest is not shown as either on that map.
Right. Yeah, that's the pasture out there. So,
Well, this is all forested.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Kenna, you're saying that all of the green,
Well, the hatched area,
the hatch area, well, that has,
That's where the horseshoe's going
No,
through.
no, the hatched area,
that's where the cul-de-sac is.
right. So there's a road crossing there, but it's 15 acres of preserved open space. Again, it's not exactly coterminous with the hatched area, but it's most of what's in that hatched area. So again, my question was, what would that say? What would it show? That wildlife crossed through there? That's probably what it would show. And again, it's being proposed as permanently protected open space. The wildlife will be able to walk through there to their heart's content from this day forward if the plan is approved.
Right, point
Okay.
So, yeah,
Point taken.
so we could, that, something conditional we could probably put in it, right?
We can talk about that, I understand. Okay, anything else?
No, I would just reiterate that we are committed to Plan number 3, the specific plan. That's what we hope to get approved, and that's what we hope to come back in front of you again with at some point in 2024. And, fingers crossed, that's what we do. So appreciate all the work that all the folks have put into the plan.
Okay, DRB questions, Paul?
3, the little spur that was in 1 and 2, is that given to the town too?
Yeah.
Okay, so that basically that little,
Under Plan 3.
under Plan 3, I'm just saying, that little spur
Yeah.
is a no developed part of the town.
It's a
That-
different scale, so you don't see it. But
No, but I'm trying to say is that,
Right,
it's
exactly.
mentioned in 1 and 2, and then all of a sudden.
No,
three's
it's
got
a
the little-
good question.
Okay.
They should have all been the
So,
same.
right, so that open space area is, it's used by Winslow Farm for their horse operations. And that's part of our proposal with the specific plan is we
Okay.
would dedicate that land to the town, and then the town can,
Do whatever they want with it.
do whatever they want with it.
Okay.
If we're not in the specific plan, it changes everything.
That's what I want to confirm.
Yeah.
Other questions from the viewer?
The focal point, can you address the distances there? The 1,320 feet walk from focal points? Is there any, have you looked at like a primitive path with the Army Corps across the wetland or anything like that?
Yeah, so the first question, the distances to the focal points. So there's really two, part of our growth management scoring was a community building within the horseshoe on the southern half. And then there's a court proposed midway on the rec path between the two units. So if those are your two focal points, the furthest piece that's away is the northern cluster. And options 2 and 3, the furthest unit is about 2,400 linear feet, and that's walking, not as a bird flies. And option 3, it's about 1,600. So the specific plan option is just a shade over what the bylaws are.
So when you're giving those distances, you're saying that's from, it'd be great if the map was up here, you could just kind of, are you talking about going from at the end of the cul-de-sac, having to go up the cul-de-sac, down the rec path and over to the public building?
Correct.
As opposed to zipping across,
Yeah, not
not going through the wetlands?
Yeah. So we're close. It says you can approve a minor, a minor change to that distance. It'd be up to the board whether 300 feet is considered minor.
There's a pretty unique circumstance in this plan, it's wetlands through the middle.
Yeah, and, it's a lot of the specific plan conversation was the two different clusters, and they kind of act like separate developments, but they're not. And we thought the rec path and the courts, actually, if they were, our original thinking was pickleball courts. Apparently they're quite noisy, so putting it in the middle of the field there was something that we thought was kind of cool and unique to, I haven't seen before. We had the building over there too, but specific plan folks didn't like it. Got it. Yeah.
So what about a consideration of like a primitive path through the wetland? Anything of that? Because what I'm seeing is people that are on the right side are gonna walk through there anyways to go over to the buildings.
Yeah, so the staff and the wetlands program, or not staff, but the bylaw requires a demarcation of the wetland limits. And then they're supposed to be left untouched to vegetate naturally. So whether it's done with boulders or, maybe sections of split rail fencing or trees or whatever that delineation, may look like. As we get closer to the end of the cul-de-sac, maybe it's a little more intense to stop people from crossing. You'll also see some notes where we have a stormwater pond that's likely going to go at the end of the cul-de-sac that will defer some people. Maybe when the grading plan turns up a discretionary, that might be something to consider. But it is quite wet too. I've walked through it, standing water most of the time.
Okay.
As you move to the north, it's not nearly as bad. Or the west, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
Well, I was just gonna say that during our earlier meetings with those committees, the public comment we primarily got was around with One Sweat Farm, which apparently needs that land around it in order to be economically viable. So these concepts 1 and 2 will have a lot of public comment about that, having houses over there. But the other thing that people commented a whole lot about was we had a little parking area up here for folks that wanted to walk on the trail through there. And I see that you're not showing that anymore. So what's your thinking there?
It's I'm sorry.
I mean, ultimately, that's up to the town to decide. As you may recall, Lisa, we had commentary in both directions when we were at the committee.
Right.
Somebody asked us to put it in, we put it in, and then somebody else slapped us silly for putting it in and questioned our sanity.
Right, because you're blocking it.
Right, so,
Yeah.
you know, the land would go into town ownership, and there's, how will the town use it long-term? Hard to know, and it would be determined through some process, what's the best way to do it? Is a parking lot for people to, you know, to stop and enjoy the view there, is that desired? It's possible there could be a public restroom that goes there, and that's something that's, you know, staff has mentioned as a possibility, so it's up to the town, and that's, you know, that's kind of our viewpoint on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so it's shown on concept plan 3, the specific plan.
Yep.
1 and 2, where concept 3 plan really puts the view shed at the forefront. Concept plan 2, look at more efficiency at on both sides of the access road.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's why it's not there.
well, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All set? John?
I'm all set. I
Okay.
used all my questions earlier too.
Okay. Is there anybody on Zoom?
There is.
Anybody participating remotely have any questions for the DRB? Okay. Any last comments?
Thank you.
I actually have one more question.
Okay, Dave,
Sorry.
no problem.
Will all these units be for sale, or will they be rental units as well?
It'd be for home ownership.
And when you look at the affordable housing, will it be a mix of all the houses that will be affordable?
We haven't determined which ones are going to be affordable yet, but we are bound by the old growth management standards of 10%. So there will be at least 11. If growth management goes forward, the other two,
They'll be on the
we
horseshoe.
haven't committed one way or the other if those directions were chosen.
Okay. Thank you.
Tell me the truth. They'll be on the horseshoe because the cul-de-sac's going to be the nice.
That's for
premium.
them to determine.
Believe it or not, if you've been out there, we've done a few site visits. The lower horseshoe, I think, is a better site than the northern side.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Okay.
It's higher than you think.
There's some really spectacular views of Mount Mansfield from the more southerly part. And, you know, when the committee, we did a site visit, walked around, and it's, you know, if you're looking south, you get these great views of Camel's Hump. There's no denying that. But if you're looking north, especially if you go south, you really get some really nice views of Mount Mansfield. So,
There's just nice views there.
Yeah.
Every direct, I mean, coming up Old Stage with the horse barn there and the fields in front, it's nice too.
It's a nice property.
I paid that field, so.
so you know.
So
I know where it's wet.
It's a great view when you're sitting there going down.
Yeah. Maybe if we built right on Mountain View, that'd be better, but we have decided a little lower.
Okay. So we're gonna close DP 24-06 at 8:57. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, DRP will go into deliberative session.
Recording stopped.
Step up.
Good.
Okay, welcome back to the Town of Williston Development Review Board for Tuesday, November 14th. It's 9:56. We have returned from deliberative session. Is there a motion for DP 23-11.1?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Nathan Andrews, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2023, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 23-11.1, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with this, on which this approval is based. Conclusion of law number 2, the proposal does comply with WDB 14.9. Therefore, the DRB will waive the requirement for an end-of-trip facility.
All right, thanks, Nate. Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none, yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
The chair is a yay. 6 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DP 23-11.2?
Yeah. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, John Hemmelgarn, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2023, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 23-11.2, and approve this discretionary permit for a master sign plan subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to submit final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek administrative sign permits, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. We'll make some adjustments to the law. Number 3 shall read 3 freestanding signs at 21-67 Commerce Street are allowable under WDB 25. And for the conditions of approval, number 3, we will be striking wall sign number 17, the associated square footage from the table, as well as freestanding sign number 3, and it's 32 square feet. Yes. And then condition number 9 shall read, final plan shall make the following changes to the proposed freestanding signs. Letter A, freestanding sign number 11 shall be replaced with a wall sign no larger than 24 square feet in the final plans. And B, freestanding sign number 3 shall be removed.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, yay or nay? Nate?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Chair is yay. 6 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DP 24-04?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, David Turner, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2023, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 24-04, and approve this boundary adjustment subject to the conditions of the approval above.
Thank you, Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Paul seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none, yea or nay? Nate?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Chair is yea, 6 in favor, none opposed. Is there a motion for DP 24-06?
Yes. Is authorized by WDB 6.6.3I, Lisa Breedenharder. Move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2023, accept the recommendation of 24-07 and authorize this application to move forward for growth management and or discretionary permit review with these changes. Section 2E, we want to strike the last sentence. This legal opinion should be provided at growth management or discretionary permit, whichever comes first, striking that sentence. 2G, WDB 26 street trees will not be required along Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. Section 4.B, we want to strike the last sentence. A functional assessment of class 3 wetlands must be included, we strike that. And 4C, proposed development must minimize encroachment into watershed protected buffer, so changing that first sentence.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Nate seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none, yea or nay? Nate?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Chair's a yay, 6 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 24th?
Yes, I move to approve the minutes of the meeting for October 24th as written.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave Turner seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay on the minutes? Nate?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Chair's a yay. 6 in favor, none opposed. The meeting minutes are approved. Is there anything else to bring forth tonight?
Nope.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Dave seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you.